Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome one and all to this, a brand new episode of Cult Potato, the Cult Movie Podcast. As always, I am your host at Campion, and joining me, my ever-faithful co-host, Mr. Grady Hooker. And I believe he has some fantastic news for us. Why don't you, I'm just going to give you the floor, and why don't you go, Grady?
The absolutely brilliant news in my life personally is that I have actually sprouted wings. And these wings are made out of candy drops. So as I fly by over these crowds of children, candy drops drip from my wings and into their hands. It's like the old school lolly throwing out of a helicopter that we used to do in primary school. And so I'm just flying around at the moment on my weekdays. I've quit my day job so that I can fly around and treat children to all of these candies.
So what you're telling me is that you like to stand over children and your sweetness drips into their mouths and this gives you great pleasure. Is that what you're saying?
Campion, you put me on the spot there because I put you on the spot and you refused to come up with an intro.
And that's why you don't with me.
But see, I was able to roll with it. Then you just turn it into a weird kid thing. I'm going to be honest, I don't even know if we can use this. Can we use this?
Speaking of weird kid things, Grady, what movie are we talking about today?
We're talking about, and I got to get this right here, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yes, because I noticed because many times during our correspondence leading up to this episode, we were both referring to it as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then I had a panic attack this morning when I suddenly remembered that no, the original film isn't called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So we just had to make sure that we were both going to be talking about the same film.
Here's my real problem. I'm kicking straight into it. Here's my real problem with this. Is that Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the very first movie here, focuses on Charlie. Like, Charlie is very clearly the main character. We are following his life, his journey around the chocolate factory, and then he gets the prize at the end. The next movie, the Johnny Depp movie, is called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and it's just entirely about Willy Wonka. It's him going off to an island and getting the Oompa Loompas and all of his backstory and sad, tragic dentistness. Like, swap the names, damn it.
Yeah, it's. I believe this is something that has been pointed out many times over the years. And for a bit of trivia, do you know why this film is actually called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory rather than Charlie?
No, but I'm going to take a crapshoot and say rights.
No.
Okay.
Racism.
Oh.
Because apparently
I didn't see that coming.
There's a couple of different stories. Well, apparently at the time, because the Vietnam War was going around and Charlie was used as like slang for the Viet Cong, and they didn't even want to be like tangentially related to all that, so they just decided to change it.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense.
And then there was another one. I can't remember. Oh, hang on. Oh yeah. Apparently, in the US, because this was a US funded film, the term Mr. Charlie was used as like a pejorative by the by the African American community for white man in power. Like historically, they would call plantation slave owners Mr. Charlie.
Okay, a lot of racism.
So there was a bit of a pressure back then to change it, and those terms have fallen out a lot in the intervening years between the 1971 film and the 2005 film?
Something like that.
The Tim Burton Johnny Depp film. There was a huge gap between, so those terms had fallen out so they could go back to using Charlie. As far as I can, although there are some conflicting stories around this, but as far as I can tell, that's the most accepted reason for the name change.
And it's perfectly, like, non-noticeable, I guess. Like, unless you knew the source material and the book and the book title. The title of this movie doesn't really matter other than confusing us when we're talking about which one we're watching. That's the biggest problem that the name presents.
Yes. Wait, just while we're on the topic of racism, Grady.
Oh, lovely. This film had a lot in it that I want to talk about that's not good, and racism wasn't on that list.
No, No. This is attempts by the filmmakers to actively avoid racism, Grady.
Oh, okay.
So this is actually positive. Okay.
All right,
But,
that's how you're framing it.
Have you read the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory book?
As a child, I don't remember it.
Yeah, I don't remember it all that well either. But I had a quick skim through it just for preparing this episode. But in the original book, the Oompa Loompas were apparently supposed to straight up just be African pygmies.
Lovely.
And when they were making this the 71 film, it was pointed out that maybe a guy having a bunch of African pygmies as his what are effectively indentured slaves isn't the best look for the movie, so maybe they should change it. And he's like, oh, okay, and so that he made them, green and orange to distance them as far from actual people as humanly possible.
Yeah, sort of just turning them into these like weird creature things. Like obviously, if we ignore the Johnny Depp film, that get not explained at all. It's just all of a sudden this race of people called Oompa Loompas. Also not explained if they are slaved or paid in wages or anything like that. So it could be just as bad.
In the book, it is specifically stated that they are employees.
Mm.
From what I remember, that could just be wishful thinking on my part, but I remember that they are given the actual option of whether or not they want to work with him. But since they're friends with Wonka, they're just like, actually, we'll just work here. This seems like a decent gig. We're not really all that interested in the rest of the modern world. So,
yeah, the Oompa Loompas, like, is everything that happened in the Johnny Depp film, I guess, book canon?
They were trying to be more accurate to the book than this film, because this film changed quite a bit from the book.
Okay. Because, like, if that's the actual canon, yeah, none of that gets explained in this film. No Loompa Land, no anything.
None of it, no.
This film is just about a young boy who gets the opportunity of a lifetime and almost throws it all away for a little bit of soda.
Yeah. I can understand why they wouldn't want to explain it, though, because that explanation does kind of bring the story to a screeching halt in the later one. Like, it works in a book, because in a book you can have, all this extra world building and stuff. But when you're watching, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, you just want to see the kids explore the factory. You're not really that interested in, like, the deep lore of the whole Wonkaverse.
Yeah, it's just, like, one or two questions answered is all I ask for. I don't want to, as you say, stop and halt the movie for 20 minutes to explain to me where the Oompa Loompas came from. But, just a one-sentence little pop in here or there.
I think he also wanted to avoid saying, oh hey, these are my indentured servants who come from Africa. Maybe they just didn't want to bring that up in the film.
That's also true. Potentially bad story point.
Maybe just not bringing it up was probably the safer option.
Yeah, there's a lot of other stuff in this film that I guess flew under the radar for so many years. But hey.
But okay, Grady, before we move on discussing this movie, I have to ask, have you seen Tim Burton's adaptation?
I have seen both films, yes.
Okay. Of the two of them, which one do you genuinely prefer?
It might be nostalgia, but I'd pick this one.
Okay. Have you rewatched the Tim Burton film recently?
Maybe 5 years ago.
Okay. So for me, I do prefer this film a lot more because I actually did rewatch the Johnny Depp film leading up to this. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is just nostalgia, but just rewatching the Johnny Depp one, it's really not a good movie. It's really not a good movie. And I don't want to go on this massive tangent because I don't want this episode to just be me, comparing and bashing on, oh, this is the new... I don't want to be like, oh, this is the newer one. The newer one's always worse. Why didn't they just leave for the older one? But I think in this case, it is genuinely just... No, the older film is genuinely the better of the two. The newer one, while it does try to be more book accurate, it makes a lot of weird... Okay, it's more book accurate in content, but it's way, way less accurate in overall, like, tone and style. And it's just like, the Tim Burton one's really uncomfortable and weird, and I don't know why they decided to have this sort of atmosphere for the film. Like, yeah, again, I don't want to just spend the whole time just shitting on that, but
You got 30 more seconds of shitting on that old newer movie.
dude, don't get me. If we do that, I'm gonna need way more than 30 seconds. Don't give me the opportunity to shit on Tim Burton.
All right, give me the opportunity to shit on the 1971 film then, because
go for it. Go for it.
When this film opened up again, I try to watch most of these with my partners on the couch, and the opening of this film caused me to write down 4 notes, which is "Man, that candy shop man is creepy," followed up by "Man, that knife salesman that meets Charlie at night is creepy," "Man, that science teacher is creepy," and lastly, "Damn, that Slugworth is creepy."
You know, Grady, from the sounds of it, it honestly sounds like your overall opinion of the British public is, wow, these people are creepy.
I don't
Maybe
know.
you just don't like the British.
Look,
Like,
that would be
1970s
self-hatred.
Britain is really creepy.
No, it was just like the demeanor and everything was just like
Yeah.
unsettling at some point. I think the knife salesman was meant to be. I don't know what he's actually called. I see a thing. I think he's called the Tinker in the credits. I don't know.
Look at that. Okay, I might be confused. The knife salesman, is he the guy Charlie meets up when we first see him at the gates to
Yes.
the factory? Okay, so it's not Slugworth. It's
No.
Are they the same character? I as a kid, I always thought they were, but are they? They're
No,
not,
they are
are
credited as 2 different people.
Okay.
Peter Capel and Gunther Meissner. But then Slugworth's pretty creepy too, to be fair. Like, he just teleports across the country and knows where all of these golden tickets are so that he can
Across
whisper
the globe,
into children's
dude.
ears.
We have Augustus Gloopus from Germany,
It's true.
Mike TV, and Veruca Salt, or is it Violet Beauregard? They're both from the US.
Look, it's just creepy to have an old dude standing in the background of a shot and then grab a child by the shoulder, pull her back, and then whisper into her ear, and nobody acknowledge it.
True, but to be fair, I'm pretty sure Slugworth is supposed to be creepy. Like, that's his whole thing, is that, this is this ominous, mysterious person who's, trying to convince these children to do bad things. Like, he's supposed to be. Like, that scene where Charlie meets him, that genuinely upset me as a child, because, it was a young kid just being accosted on the street by this adult trying to pressure him into doing something he didn't do. That genuinely upset me as a kid.
It just feels like
Not
a
the
lot
most
of it.
upsetting thing. Not the most upsetting thing about this film,
We'll
but we
get
will
there.
come to that.
This was a film of 2 halves in terms of there's everything before you get into the factory and then everything in the factory. And it just felt like pretty much all the characters we met outside the factory, we were not sticking around with them. They were bit parts. Their people could be creepy. The children could just be straight up shit. The grandparents that we barely ever talk to can be as one-dimensional and horrible as you don't need, because that's not the point of this film. The point of this film is that one scene when you walk in and everything's edible in the factory. That's this film. Yeah. That's it.
But before we get to the factory, I do want to focus a bit more on the first half.
We'll rewind it.
Yeah, because watching it as a kid, I honestly never realized just how long the first half is, because as a kid I was like, no, I don't want to see the boring stuff. I want to get to the factory, so I would fast forward it to the part where they first enter the factory. But rewatching it as an adult, I'm like, wait, the pre-factory stuff is literally half the film.
Yeah,
we spend most of the movie we spend half of the movie outside of the factory.
Yeah, it's a massive amount of it is spent out there, and as you say, it is a bit surprising watching it back.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm actually gonna defend that. I feel like that, to the film's credit, that actually helps it out a lot, because establishing how the world is outside the factory, just the mundanity. Neither of these are words. Why am I saying? Just how mundane this world is compared to the world inside the factory. It gives us something to compare it to and helps us to see how special Willy Wonka's chocolate factory is, because that's kind of the problem I have with the 2005 film, is that everywhere is weird and has this strange, Tim Burton-y design, both inside the factory
I only
and
gave
outside.
you 30 more seconds to shit on that film.
Yeah, well, I found a way to work it in there, but I'm doing it in context this time. Like, the whole film just like, because the world outside it was just as strange and weird, and the people were just as weird, it made the factory just feel less special in comparison. Sure, the factory was still fantastical, but because the world outside of it was also fantastical to a certain extent, it just really took away from that. I think if he'd taken the approach of this film, where the town Charlie lives in genuinely looks really depressing and really boring.
It's like, industrial London.
Yeah. Although, I looked this up, it's filmed in Munich, in Germany, which explains a lot. It's just like, yes, this is 1970s Germany. That's why it looks so depressing. And,
also that.
Yeah, and I honestly got a kick in that it's not just the way it looks, but it's just pretty much all of the people, with the exception of Charlie and his family, are all just horrible, horrible people. Like, his teacher is the worst.
And creepy.
Oh, and the children in his class are just as bad. And then, you know how they have all the cutaway vignettes to all the superfluous characters who are there just to illustrate, you know, how big the chocolate bar searches is. And it's just like, wow, all of you are absolutely terrible. Like that woman who is genuinely considering whether or not that she wanted her husband back from the kidnappers, or whether she wanted to keep her chocolate bars.
Yeah, everybody's... greed seems to be the big word, and I'll come back to that later on from one of my notes, but it really is a film that doesn't shy away from showing just how shit humanity is. Like in that, as you say, that first one, and then this is the escape. This is almost like, if you hadn't told me otherwise, I don't know if this is a theory, I'm coming up with it on the spot right now, it's not in my notes, but if you told me that Charlie never got his golden ticket, and the whole second half of the film is just him imagining what the factory would be like, and like dreaming, I would believe you, because it seems like it's the dreams of a child who lives in that shitty industrial world full of greedy people. And yeah, I'd believe that.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's not just industrial Britain in the 70s, but I've gotten this from a lot of British fiction that I've consumed over the years, that a lot of them have just had very cynical approaches to how the world feels and how the world works. So, yes, I can, even though this was like an American-funded production, I can totally believe that, like, this was written from like the wider society as a whole was written from a British perspective. Especially the school scene. The school scene really felt like it was written by or at least it was written from the perspective of someone who's been through the British education system. Hey, if Pink Floyd has taught me anything, the British education system is pretty bad. Well,
it's just taught you harsh. That we don't want no education.
Exactly. And I just gotta say this, Grady, but that scene with the guy in the supercomputer, that fucking sent me, dude. That was really goddamn funny. Oh, I never realized just how there's some clever writing in here. There's some really good writing. Like the part with the scientist guy is just like, oh yes, I've got a computer that'll compute exactly where the golden tickets are, and he pulls the reading out from the computer, and it's like, okay, the computer says, I'm not going to tell you, that would be cheating. I busted a gut at that. That was hysterical. And then he keeps having this argument back and forth with the computer, and the computer's just like, no. And he's just like, oh, well, I'll share the grand prize with you if you tell me where they are. And the computer's just like, I'm a computer. What would I want with a lifetime supply of chocolate? Oh, it's great. There's some clever stuff in there.
There's a small amount of it hidden in, because I imagine those scenes are not, like, book scenes. I don't remember.
Oh, no. No, they're not. They're definitely not.
So, props to whoever did the adaptation. Looks like Roald Dahl did it with David Seltzer, was the screenplay. So, props there to them to adding into this world of, this, as you say, these horrible, horrible people.
Yeah. As you said, it is to kind of, to help the factory serve as this kind of escape. And it is also to show that, Charlie is a genuinely good person in this world surrounded by just all of these atrocious and horrible people. Okay, well, they're not atrocious. They're not like war criminals or anything. but they're bad people. They're not good people. They're kind of shitty. They're just greedy and just a bit unpleasant, but they're not the worst. Which is, again, it makes me believe that this was heavily influenced by a British writer.
I've got one word next to Charlie in this pre-factory piece, which is just optimistic. Like, the kid just always believed that there was a chance that, you know, even though all the tickets are gone, he's still going to buy a bar. And, yeah, he just, compared to, like, you know, his grandpa who was a gambler and all of these other greedy people, he just was like, I'll give it another shot. Life is always good and happy and gumdrop.
Even then, like, the way that I saw it is that, like, because he bought the chocolate bar, and in the back of his mind, I'd say that the whole golden ticket thing was definitely there, especially since, as he was going to buy it, people saying, oh, the golden ticket's still there. But, yeah, the way how when he buys his first chocolate bar, when he opens it, he's not looking for the ticket. He just devours it right there before he even forgot to pay it. It's just like, no, this is a kid who's eaten like cabbage soup his whole life. He just wants the chocolate because he just wants something that doesn't taste like garbage. And the second one he bought, he's just like, actually no, I'm gonna give it to my Grandpa Joe. I'm not gonna keep it for myself. Okay, he did open it the moment he left the store, but you know, he bought it with his own money, so I just assume that
well, he'll
have a little bit of it and then give it to his grandpa when he gets home. And you know, when he got that chocolate bar for his birthday, after he opened it up, he shared it with all of his family. So it's just like, actually, Charlie's, you know, a decent kid. He's generous, he's kind, he's polite, whereas everyone else is an absolute monster.
And then my last note before we get into the factory, because we are like 20 minutes into this episode, was just that newspaper...
Almost, or would you say halfway through this episode?
That newspaper guy had Charlie's back, man. When he pulled out that golden ticket and everyone was harassing him, and you know, he's just like, bugger off, get out of the way. Charlie, run home, and like carved him a path. The newspaper guy was a G.
Actually, no, that's true, yeah. There aren't a lot of great people, but there's some good ones in there. I don't think he was in the book originally, but I think it's another example of just a character that works, that kind of needed to be there because, you know, you gave Carly a part-time job. He was there to kind of, you know, show him the way home. It's a nice change. Mm-hmm. And before we do, just my last thing to say before we move on to the factory half of the film, just, you mentioned before the screenwriter. Roald Dahl did work on the screenplay. However, the studio weren't happy with his original script. That, and he was taking so long to put it in that they just had to have someone else come in. I believe you said his name was Seltzer, was it?
Yeah, David Seltzer.
Yeah. He actually went uncredited for his work on this. They needed to get him to come in to finish it up and to just to make some changes that they needed for the film. In fact, Roald Dahl did not like this movie at all. He absolutely hated it, especially because of all the changes that were made. He did not want Gene Wilder to play Willy Wonka. he which is surprising considering he's literally the best part of the whole movie.
Oh yeah, 100%. We haven't even got to him.
Yeah. I think, well, there were a few reasons, but he wanted someone else. He really wanted someone else to play him, and he didn't want an American like Wilder to play Willy Wonka. He wanted a British person. Yeah. But, and speaking of Willy Wonka...
That's what we call a segue.
Shall we move into the factory half of the film now?
Let's move on in.
Okay. So, as you've said before, I think we both agree that the best part of this movie is Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka. I don't think that's a controversial statement. It's like saying David Bowie was the best part of Labyrinth. I feel like if I make the statement Gene Wilder is the best part of the Willy Wonka movie, I very few people are going to dispute that.
No, he is the heart and soul of this movie, and he only shows up halfway through.
Yeah. But when he does show up, he is... I never appreciated just how fantastic of an actor Gene Wilder is, and just how much fun he is while he's on screen, and just all of these little clever things that he says while he's there. And apparently he actually had a fair amount of control over his character for the movie. more so than actors usually get with their character. Like, the outfit was his idea. He improvised some of his lines. That scene on the boat, with the tunnel, where he's mumbling that creepy poem, that wasn't in the script. He just did that.
Look, when you talked about unnerving scenes, we all knew we were coming to this boat scene. You just want to slingshot us right there now.
No, we should probably go through the actual, genuinely whimsical part of the film. But I did just want to say Gene Wilder improvised his crazy rambling in that scene, and the cast genuinely thought he'd just cracked under pressure from filming and he was just going nuts, which will never stop being amusing for me.
Talk about the scene. We're already there, Campion.
Okay. I assume you mean the scene where he's coming out of the factory for the first time to meet them?
Oh no, I don't. Just talk about the boat scene. Just get all the scary and the spoopy.
No, I want to build up to it, Grady. You can't just jump right there. You got to build up to it.
You can.
I did want to quickly talk about the scene where he's walking out of the factory to come and meet the kids. Because that's another scene that he'd actually come up with. Because you know how he's like walking there and he's like kind of limp and he looks like he's struggling to walk with his cane, and then right before he gets there, he leaves the cane behind and then he does that small little somersault forward to show, hey, I'm fine, actually, I can walk just okay. Yeah, that was all his idea, and the reason he gave for it is because he wanted to demonstrate right off the bat that he's a character that Wonka is the kind of person who just can't be trusted, or that he's a trickster. He'll say and do things. He'll constantly say and do things to lie to the other characters and stuff. He just wanted to kind of put that in the audience's head in kind of a subtle way, which I really appreciate.
It definitely set the tone for Wonka and his personality, not necessarily, and a bit I guess his presence as well, but just outlined it, as you say, not everything is as it seems.
And actually, quite a number of things in this film were actually improvised, or they had to do without any of the actors knowing. The next one that I can think of is the part where they go into the candy room for the first time. None of the Gene Wilder was the only one who was allowed to look at the room before they actually filmed. All of the other actors had no idea what was going to be inside there. So the look of amazement as they all walk in, that's all of their genuine reaction because they're seeing it for the very first time.
Yeah, I'd fully believe it, especially when you got something like kids where, kids can be good actors, kids can be bad actors, but it's a lot easier to just capture their genuine excitement, especially when that's what you're going for when someone walks into this room, right? You just want to show off how cool this room is.
Yeah. And there's a lot of really subtle things, because obviously when they go to that room for the first time, that's when Wilder does what is, with the exception of Candyman, probably the most famous song from this movie. Pure Imagination, which is, by the way, my favorite song. And I gotta ask, Grady, because this is a musical, what is your favorite song?
This is a musical?
Yes, Grady, it's a musical.
I didn't notice any music in this film.
Grady, they constantly stop to sing. What are you talking? Grady, there's a lot of numbers in this movie. How did you not know? Are you f***ing with me?
I don't know what you're talking about.
With me. You're f***ing with me, aren't you?
What's music?
I can't tell if you're f***ing with me now.
You're giving me so many bleeps to edit, Campion.
There are 14 songs, Grady. They total 36 minutes. That's a third of the movie's runtime dedicated to singing.
I like the one that the Oompa Loompas sung. I so wish this was a video podcast right now. Because I want to see your face. And I want everybody to see mine right now.
I can never tell if you're working me, Grady. You know me too well.
Don't work yourself into a shoot, buddy.
I'm about to.
Brother Me Softly. No, honestly, no song sort of super sticks out to me as, like, this was the best song. Candyman, obviously the first one up, gets a bit, as you say, Pure Imagination, but that's probably for the scene that's happening around it, less so the song itself. So yeah, none of them are, like, super sticky outy. I couldn't sing you a verse from any of them, even though, you know, we just watched the film, so none of the above. But clearly you like Pure Imagination.
I do. I think it's a brilliant song. And I remember my heart breaking slightly when when Britain hosted the Olympics, when because during the big opening ceremony, you know, they had all these people come in singing, you know, all of these classic British songs, and the person they got to do Pure Imagination wasn't Gene Wilder, it was Russell Brand, and that made me unreasonably furious. It's just like, no, don't get me wrong, he's a good singer, he did a good job. No, don't have him sing that song, please.
Look,
actually, hang on, was Gene Wilder alive?
It's a good question.
I'm pretty sure he was, because the British Olympics, that was 2012?
2012, London 2012.
Yeah, London 2012. Yeah. Yeah, and Wilder died in 2016, so...
Maybe.
Then again, he was dying of Alzheimer's, so I actually have no idea if he could have performed.
Here's my thing. You want to sit around and talk about what song is best. No one cares about that with this film. What we need to talk about is what was your favorite word art effect while the Oompa Loompas were singing. See, again, sorry, I want it to be a video podcast, because I know damn well he just did a spit take.
You know, I'm going to say no, I don't have a favourite word art. Funnily enough, I was focusing on other things.
The word art does not age, it is horrendous.
Yeah, as much as I love this film, some of the effects in this movie and some of the visual choices don't age well. Like, don't worry, I love the moment of them all walking into the candy room, but it looks like a factory room filled with a bunch of plastic garbage now.
Oh yeah, it just looks like it's covered in plastic. The chocolate river doesn't look great.
Don't get me wrong, it looked great when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
It looked fantastic. Now that I'm an adult and this film has been out for like 50, 60 years now, it hasn't aged very well. But that chocolate river never looked good. Even as a kid, I thought that looked like a sewer runoff. It has never looked good. When my mother watched this film as a child, she thought it looked like sewer runoff. She told me so. No one has ever thought that river looked good.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, I'll let you have that one.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? Because I'll give this to the 2005 film. That candy room looked pretty good. That chocolate river looked like genuine chocolate. However, the one in the 71 film, the film we're reviewing now, that did have actual chocolate in it.
I don't believe you.
It did. It did have. It was made of a mixture of. I have it here. It was made of a mixture of water, real chocolate, and cream.
Cool, so when they put 1% chocolate in it, like someone accidentally dropped their chocolate bar in it when they were like prepping the water, that's very clearly just water. Maybe.
Well, that's why it was that's why it was that poo brown, because that's actual chocolate, but it looked terrible because it just looked like poo water.
Yeah, they crediting the like pee that also came out of the actor that played Augustus a little bit. Like, is that also an ingredient?
No. Although I'm just looking at something he said about, because apparently because they put real chocolate and cream in the river, it smelled terrible when it went off. So, you know, it smelled absolutely atrocious.
It feels like you did all of this to give it a cool, like, chocolate river look, and then it didn't look good, and you still had to deal with it smelling like turd.
So it smelled like actual poo water, yes.
But yeah, that's all I got for this room. As you say, like, the effects, it does not give you as much amazement as it would have as a child. It's very clearly props.
But fortunately, the way, it's shot and the actors, it does help to elevate it to something. But I do have to really try really hard to suspend my disbelief for this. It's just like, okay, just focus on the performances and the way it's presented. Don't look at anything else.
Yeah,
it's
don't
like
look
playing
too
a
closely.
PlayStation game from like, it's like playing an early PlayStation game. It's like, no, don't look at the graphics. Don't care about anything else. Just focus on focus on the game. Don't focus on what it looks like.
Yeah. And if you do that, then you're absolutely fine, and you can make it through the entire movie with no problems.
Okay, and just a few bits of trivia that I have here.
Somebody here visited the IMDb page, I guess.
Shut up, Grady. I say as I'm sitting here on the page here.
Rattle them off to me.
Apparently the Oompa Loompa, because when they had the boat in the chocolate river, the actor playing the Oompa Loompa steering it, he thought he was steering it for real and not that he was on like an actual track, and the director didn't have the heart to tell the guy that he wasn't steering anything at all. So he just pretended. Which
nice.
Yes. And apparently the Oompa Loompas were all like really good mates. Like they all became like really good friends on set. And so when filming would finished, apparently they were like super hard partiers and they'd all go out to bars together. So all the Oompa Loompas would go out partying after filming. They even had like a limo they would use to travel and to like go night clubbing and stuff.
I'm not surprised. There was only like 10 of them. And when every one of your scenes is together, you're singing together, you're doing the physical stuff like throwing each other around. It seems pretty easy to come up with sort of a brotherhood of everybody there. You got any more trivia to throw at me? I'm sure you do.
Just back to the Oompa Loompas. Because this film was shot in Munich. However, there weren't nearly enough little people to cover all of the Oompa Loompas they needed for the movie. So even like little people who were actors within Germany. So they just pulled them from wherever they could find them. So the vast majority of them couldn't speak English at all. They only spoke German, which is why if you look closely as they're singing their songs, none of them know very few of them know the words. You just got to look at the Oompa Loompas in the back, and they're trying to mouth along. They do not know what they're saying, Grady.
Again, I'm not surprised. Stop looking too closely at this film and just enjoy it with the nostalgia, damn it.
Another bit of interesting one. They didn't want to show too many vehicles, so the movie wouldn't feel dated. Which, I mean,
that worked out.
Good luck with that. Yeah.
Look, the car wash car will be dated.
Yeah. Anyway,
you're out of trivia finally.
Well, I could, but I mean, a lot of these are just really.
What I heard is that we can get on to my theory about how Willy Wonka really wanted to bang Mrs. TV.
Go ahead, before we move to the tunnel scene, go ahead, Grady. Go ahead.
Throughout the entire film, he's like just touching her on the shoulder. He's like paying specific attention to her. He's leading her off when it's scenes like that. Super excited to be able to go with her to go get the boy when he gets sent into a million little pieces and shrunk up. Look, there was just a lot of times throughout this film where I'm like, he hitting on her.
But to be fair, it is Wonka. He could just be with her.
It is entirely
I'm so sorry.
possible.
I'm just making this. This is going to be hell for you to censor, isn't it?
Do you want to know how many you've already said?
How many?
That was number 7.
Sorry, Grady.
It's fine. That's 8 more than you've put in any other episode. We've had one swear in the rest of the entire show.
I'm gonna put it all in now.
Look, just talk about the tunnel scene, Campion.
Okay, this is far and away the most infamous scene from this movie. A scene that I didn't think anything of when I was a child. It just kind of went over my head, and I didn't really think anything of it. It's just a little weird tunnel scene. But, yeah, what the fuck, Grady? Why? Why is this in this movie?
I have no answer for you. As a kid, I don't remember it being in the movie. Like, I don't know if I just trauma purged it from my brain. It's not until I became an adult and started rewatching the film that I went, I do not remember this at all.
Although, to be fair, it was cut out of a lot of TV rebroadcasts and
so maybe that's why.
And re-releases, so that's probably why. The tunnel scene and Mrs. Bucket's song are like the two most famous scenes for being cut from the film.
I think Mrs. Bucket's song adds a lot to it, so I wouldn't cut that, but that's just me.
I think it's the worst song in the film, and I honestly would rather have the tunnel scene.
Ugh. Look, the tunnel scene was just creepy and weird.
Yeah, there's like people with like snakes and bugs have crawling on them. There's just like there's one scene of like a rat. Why is it? There's like I'm rewatching it right now just while we're talking. There's like a chameleon that just eats a cricket for some reason. And of course Wonka does that weird poem for reasons that I don't. Well, okay, he did it because Gene Wilder thought it would be funny to f with the cast. That's why he did it. And fun fact, the poem he says that's actually from the book. He lifted that from the book itself.
Okay.
Yeah. But as I said earlier, the cast had no idea he was going to do that, so they genuinely thought he was losing his mind there.
Might have also been losing his mind. Yeah, I don't know. I guess to me, and I'm sure there's been 50 million academic theories around it, I just don't get why it was in the film. Like, it's there, it makes you feel uncomfortable, but it's not like anything ever happened as a consequence. It's not like you had to feel uncomfortable so that you could be busted out with the joy, or it was foreshadowing something. It really could be cut and you'd never notice.
Yeah. I think it is, honestly, because maybe it's there just to illustrate just how much, like, Willy Wonka just wants to mess with the people in his factory, because he's looking for a new factory head, so he just wants to do weird stuff just to see what they'll do.
Yeah. I don't know. It never truly gets explained, so I'm not a huge fan of the scene.
I like it purely because of just because of how strange and out of place it is. Like, it comes up out of nowhere, never explained, and then they just don't talk about it whatsoever.
Yeah, it almost feels like they filmed it wondering if they were going to cut it, maybe, so they just didn't reference it, like, just in case it gets cut kind of thing. But I don't know if they had a plan, I don't know what. Tunnel scene, weird.
Tunnel scene, very weird. And I'm trying to see, because I remember there was, like, an urban legend going around that if you slowed down the scene, you could see, like, a chicken getting its head cut off. And no matter how many times I rewatch it, I cannot see it.
Yeah, there's a bunch of, like...
Not that I want to see a chicken getting its head cut off. I would just like to know if it's in there.
Like, I grew up on a farm, it's fine. Yeah, there's a lot of things that were, like, I guess, rumoured, as you say, to be in that tunnel scene. But overall, they're just weird things. They're not necessarily, gore or disturbing or anything like that. Just real weird.
Like, a lot of what I think makes it so unsettling is just... A lot of it is the music and the actors responding to all the things that they see. So, like, yeah, I suppose the actual content they're watching isn't that, like, isn't that gore. Well, it isn't that disturbing, but it's still weird. It's still really goddamn weird.
So, other than the tunnel scene, then, do you have anything after that to talk about in this movie? Or did the movie just end at the tunnel scene? Is that the last thing of note?
Well, no, because, I mean, at this point, only one child has been eliminated from this fantastical game of The Apprentice crossed with the Hunger Games.
Was this the inspiration for Squid Game?
Yeah, why not? I mean, Gene Wilder and Squid Game would have been, Would have been interesting.
You've heard it here first. Willy Wonka, Squid Game prequel. Anybody who started
instead of being run by those people in the weird jumpsuits, they have Oompa Loompas
Yep.
running around singing songs as people are getting murdered.
Very first Squid Game was in the Wonka factory. It was run by Charlie.
Yeah. But anyway, after the infamous tunnel scene, where do we move on to from there, Grady?
I've only got one note left, and that's why I asked, because if there was anything you wanted to get out before I throw out an absolutely batshit theory, that's all I've got left for this film.
Okay. So from that point onward, we cycle through the rest of the kids as... I mean, this is a really famous story, so I don't really feel like I need to go plot point by plot point in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, sorry. But, you know, all the other kids who are just absolutely terrible, through their own hubris, they end up getting, having to get escorted or kicked out of the factory for whatever reason. Like, Veruca Salt ends up nearly getting incinerated. Violet Beauregard gets turned into a blueberry, and so she needs to be squeezed out. Augustus Gloop gets sucked up the chocolate river pipe. And now that I know how absolutely terrible that water smells, I thought it was just food coloring. So now knowing that it actually smelled atrocious makes me feel really sad for him, you know, stuck in that pipe. Mike TV gets shrunk. Most of that plays out the same as it does in the book. However, the scene with with Veruca Salt singing her song and standing on the, you know, how she stands on the weight and it drops her into the furnace. Yeah. In the book, what happens is that Wonka actually has a room filled with squirrels, and they're all tapping, and they're all like looking for nuts, essentially, you know, for to put nuts into his chocolate. And
which
so
is what the next film does.
Yes, that's what the 2005 film does. Obviously, this is being a film from the 70s. They couldn't have hundreds of highly trained squirrels doing that, so they just swapped it out for the geese, you know, laying those eggs.
Mm-hmm. Like 3 geese.
Yeah, that's one minor change there. Veruca, we don't see any of the children after they've gone through all of this. Like Mike TV had to be stretched, Violet Beauregard had to be squeezed, so now she's blue. We see all of those in the 2005 film, but here, once the film ends, it's just Charlie and his grandfather in the glass elevator with Wonka.
In the literally worst green screen thing that I have ever seen in my life. The glass elevator.
This was 6 years before Star Wars. Cut them some slack, okay?
I will not cut them any slack. They dangled a model made out of the lightest material I have seen in my life on some fishing wire in front of a green screen. That thing looked like it was made out of paper. It was horrible. That's all.
Again, Grady, 6 years before Star Wars. Tron wouldn't come out till 1982. Cut these people some slack.
I will not cut them any slack. They put too much budget into the factory and not enough into that glass elevator green screen.
Actually,
at least light it properly.
Did you know that this was actually made on a shoestring budget? Well, for Hollywood films anyway. It actually had a relatively small budget than what you would expect for a film like this.
Are you going to make me cut them some slack for that green screen shot?
It only had hang on. It had a budget of $3 million, but I don't know if that's adjusted for inflation. So just give me a quick sec.
He's going to go do some Googling. Well, I'll just tease my theory that we're going to throw out afterwards, which I'm going to say is just an anime like The 7 Deadly Sins. And then we're going to come back to that, and now I'm vamping, and I don't know what I'm doing, because he's still Googling, and it's taking a while.
How is this like The 7 Deadly Sins? How is this like 7 Deadly Sins?
Did you just give me the facts and figures, Camp Dog?
Hang on, I don't know if this actually is adjusted for inflation. So, you know what? It was made on a budget of $3 million. I'm assuming that was $3 million in 1971 money. It made like $4 million at the box office. So it was like this huge, it was like a box office bomb. And then it started getting picked up by television networks. It jumped around a lot of different networks while it was being rebroadcast on cable. And yeah, it just managed to pick up a huge following. And of course, nowadays, it's considered this all-time classic family film. It's on the same level as like The Wizard of Oz.
That's...
I didn't actually mean to jump right to the end. I just thought I'm throwing out statistics, so why not? There's actually quite a few things more that I wanted to discuss about the film. But Grady, just give us your theory. Give us your theory.
The characters are representing the 7 deadly sins.
Oh, you mean it literally? Then why'd you say the anime 7?
Oh, I was vamping Campion.
Ah.
I've never seen that anime. Yeah, just all the characters seem to embody a different one, you know. Obviously we talked about greed being a massive aspect in it. Sloth.
I guess if you were to pin it down to a specific character, I guess Veruca Salt you'd probably pick as greed, because how she always wants things and, you know, mine, that sorts of things.
Yeah, that really is hers. Like, you can't argue anybody else is the biggest, and obviously gluttony would go to Augustus quite clearly.
I guess Wrath would be Mike TV.
Sloth. Won't get off the TV.
I put Sloth as Uncle Joe, but alright.
Pride. Oh, well, if you're going for ones that are not going to be contested, Pride for Violet, who, like, always wants to be the center of attention, won't stop doing all of this and that. Charlie lusts after that golden ticket. It's a stretch, okay? And then Willy Wonka is Wrath. He snaps, he gets angry, he seems to have a bit of a temper. They ended up giving Grandpa Joe envy, because he's just, I guess, envious of Charlie.
I'd honestly give him sloth, because he didn't do a day of work in his life, pretending to be sick in that bed, until magically, you know, oh, look at me, I'm all better now that you're going to this big exciting chocolate factory. Don't take your poor mum who works herself to the bone every day. Take me, the guy who doesn't do anything. Oh, that poor woman. That poor woman. Well, Joe actually has gained quite a significant hate following in recent years. People being just like, wait a minute, Grandpa Joe was a piece of shit. Why did he get to go? In fact, I'm looking for it. There's actually an entire subreddit dedicated to just shitting on Uncle Joe. On Grandpa Joe, sorry.
Look, I'm sure Grandpa Joe, bad human being in your mind, but is there anything else that you wanna sort of mention, you wanna get down about this movie, because we're getting on in this episode.
Yeah, true. There are a few bits of trivia out there, but I feel like we can just kind of skip those, because I don't feel like they really add anything to the overall discussion. Something that I do want to talk about just briefly, because I think it's a really cool scene, is the bit towards the end when we get to Willy Wonka's office.
Mm-hmm. And everything's in half.
Everything's cut in half for like no explained reason whatsoever. According to the director, he didn't want to get to the end of this fantastical film and show that Wonka's office is just another boring office, so he's just like, I don't know, I guess we'll just cut everything in half, I guess. Yeah, let's go with that. And for that scene, because that's the one where Gene Wilder gets very angry and he starts shouting, none of the other actors he was working with knew how loud he was going to get, and apparently he really wanted to tell him, but the directorial staff didn't. Well, the director didn't let him, because they wanted the reaction to be genuine. Because over the course of filming, Wilder had built up this really great friendship with pretty much everyone that he's worked with. Apparently Gene, and I've heard this on a number of different films, that Gene Wilder is just a really fun person to be around and a really great person to work with. So, and he didn't want to, scream at this young child and, possibly upset his friendship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see. It seems like this movie, for better or for worse, because like I'm sure if it was a different movie, we'd shit on these techniques, try to get the genuine reactions out of actors and actresses in the films. Like, sure, their amazement as they walk into the factory is something that you really want to capture like that, but stuff like the tunnel scene and stuff like, as you say, hear him yelling at them, like, we would absolutely shit over another movie. Like, if one of these kids came out and were like, I was traumatized by this, then there'd be a massive problem.
Yeah. But I think that it is because, from what I've read, every actor after this would go on to have like a lifelong friendship with the guy, even those who didn't stick in acting. In fact, I don't remember exactly who it was, but Wilder, from one of the kids that he worked with, I don't think it was on this project, it might have been another one, one of the kids was being put up, that he worked with was being put up for adoption, and he'd become really good friends with him, so he offered, if I'll take you and you can come live with me. It didn't end up working out because the kid didn't want to go and live in the States, but he just genuinely seemed to be the kind of person who made friends with everyone that he worked with. So I think, and I think that's why he was kind of able to get away with it, because it was just like those one scenes, and he did kind of want to tell them about it, but he just wasn't able to.
So I'll just blame shitty filmmaking staff then. It's not Gene Wilder's fault. It's the filmmaker's fault.
Although, to be fair, those kids do look like they're having an absolutely fantastic time making this movie. They look like they're having a lot of fun.
I'm sure overall they all did, yeah.
Like, I know there have been a few reunions in the intervening years, like all the kids have gotten back together to record like D&D commentaries, and they've done panels at conventions and stuff. Some of them didn't even go into acting after doing this movie. This was their only role. Like the kid who played Charlie, he did this movie, he did a good job, he enjoyed it, but he didn't really want to go into acting, so he just became a vet, and that's just what he's been doing his whole life. In fact, his own wife didn't even find out that he played Charlie until several years into their marriage.
That's a nice little bit there. Like, humble dude.
Oh yeah, he seemed like a pretty good kid. Pretty good guy. And apparently nowadays, because it took him a while for him to really, because he didn't really like showbiz after doing that, but I think nowadays, because as he grew up, other kids started watching it, new generations of kids started watching this movie, so he'll go into like local schools and he'll give talks. It's like, oh yeah, this is what the film was like, this is what I was doing, and he'll talk about like veterinary practices, like how to look after their pets and stuff, and what being a vet is like. So yeah, he just seems to be living he only did one film, but seems to just be living a good life.
You picked a good one.
Yeah, and let's be real, being a vet that's not exactly that's still a really good career. So it's not as if he failed in life. I think him and the kid who played Augustus Gloop, this was the only movie they ever did. The guy did Augustus Gloop. I don't even think he spoke English all that well. Most of the acting he does in the film is just phonetic English.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he just went on to become like because I think he actually lived in the town that they shot the film in. So he just went on to become like a tax accountant once the film was over.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. If you're filming in Germany, you're featuring a German person. It's a lot easier to just get a real German in, and if they've eliminated early in the game, doesn't have a lot of lines, easy enough.
Yeah. Anyway, that's enough from me. My overall thoughts on this movie. I didn't think I would end up liking it after all these years, because there's a lot of films that I watched as a kid that I just ended up hating as an adult. I still really like this film. Still really good at drawing me in, and just... I feel like a wanker for saying this, but you know what? It really had that sense of childlike wonder for me.
It's because you are for saying that.
Yes, I am.
Look, it's a good film. Like, objectively, it's a good film. You do have to ignore a lot of the effects that did not age well, and you have to ignore the occasional things here and there, but, sit down with a kid and watch it.
A lot of early Doctor Who vibes for me for those effects.
Unfortunately, no Daleks in the Chocolate Factory, just vaguely racist Oompa Loompas.
No. Although John Pertwee, one of the I think it was the third actor to play the Doctor, he was considered for the role of Wonka. And when you think about it, Wonka and the Doctor do have a fair bit in common, so I can see why they'd be looking there.
You just couldn't get off trivia, could you?
No, I couldn't. Well, then we got into Doctor Who trivia. It's like, oh, this is a whole new ball game now.
Look, take everything about Doctor Who, shove it in a box, close it off, because that's not what this is about. Now wrap up Willy Wonka.
I know. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us on this especially long episode of Cold Potato.
First one over an hour.
Yeah, it's an old beloved film that we both love a lot, so I'm not surprised. And there's a lot of interesting things to talk about with this movie, so I'm not surprised that we went on for.
We skipped over the last quarter of the movie.
True. A lot of it was honestly focused on the first half and that scene with where they go into the candy room. But to be fair, that is like the most iconic scene in this movie. So we
didn't want to be here for another hour.
No.
I got dinner to go eat.
Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us talking about this fantastic movie. Hope you all had a wonderful time. And Grady, what is our next episode going to be about?
Our next episode is going to be a movie that you have seen and I have not, and has been highly recommended by those around me who know that I'm doing a cult movie podcast, and that is none other than Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yes, another classic British film that I believe they both came out at around the same time?
Roughly, yeah. 71, 75, I think.
This is another film that I haven't seen in forever, so I'm very much looking forward to it, and I hope that it's aged well, because a lot of old comedies do not age well, so fingers
Only one
crossed.
way to find out.
Anything else to add before we wrap up, Grady?
I hate you for making me edit out all of the swears in this one.
You know, of all the films that would make me do that, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, not one of them.
You had 10 swears, and throughout the rest of the entire show, I think you had 1 in, like, the first episode. I don't know how.
Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us today on the Cult Potato Podcast. As always, we are your hosts. I am Campion, joined by my good buddy Grady. This has been the Lexicon of Law, and we hope to see you all next time.